Good morning, everybody. It is time to start the subject. Welcome to the class, everybody. Welcome to the class. How are you? We are now in the third meeting with you. We discuss the subject entitled Slavery, Trail of Tears, and Civil War. As we discussed last 2 weeks, that American population come from immigrant from Europe. The immigrant find a very vast land, a very fertile land, and enormous land. And the result, when they had hard work, they need more workers. As a labor. Do you still remember it? Men and women were needed to work the land at that period. White bond servant, European servant, paying their passage across the ocean from Europe through, we discussed already, indentured labor, is, but didn't solve the problem. Early in the 17th century, that ship loaded with African slaves introduced a solution. First, only 2 slaves, only 2 African people, only 20, only 20. But because of needed and cheap, then the farmers, the settler need more and more. Slaves were most economical on large farms where labor intensive cash crops such as tobacco, sugarcane, and so on could be grown. They need more slaves. Then the business ship who take the raw material, the semi-finished material in the new land brought to England, back again to America, they brought slavery. They brought slave. And how they can get the slave in Africa? It's a very inhuman. They take the American slave in a very bad ways. Then slavery was practiced throughout the American colonies during the 70s and 18th centuries. That is the slave helped build the economic foundation of the new nation. The invention of cotton gin in 1793 also solidified the importance of slavery to the South economy. Foundation of slavery in America, that is the first foundation. In the early 17th century, European settlers in the North America turned to African slaves as a cheaper, more plentiful labor than indentured servant. Between 1774 and 1804, all of the northern states abolished slave, but the so-called peculiar institution remain absolutely vital to the South. Why? Because they have a lot of land. They are cultivating. They need labor. They need worker. They need good and cheap workers. By 1860, the slave reached nearly 4 million, with more than half living in the cotton produce in the state of South. They were prohibited from learning to read and write, and their behavior and movement was restricted and controlled. That is the fate of the slave. While they are in Africa, they are not a farmer. They are not a workers. Some are noblemen. Some are noblemen. The Western, the Europe, take them by force. Sometimes using like fishing, like getting a fish. When there are happy family, take a walk somewhere, and the white man take it and brought it to the harbor, ship then to the New World to be sold in the plantation, in the famous area in the South America. Then a strict hierarchy among slaves, from privileged house slave and skilled artisan down to low field hand, help keep them divided and less likely to organize against their masters. Never again have to say yes to the masters. Slave marriage had no legal basis, but slave did marry and raise large family. Most slave owners encourage this practice, but nonetheless didn't hesitate to divide slave family by sale or removal. You get the meaning? Slave can marry, have to bear a son or a girl, should have a baby, but in a family of slave, the master can at any time divide separate their family. It was so cruel, but it is a story. They need it. During the slavery, there were also slave reform, but always in vain, no successful. There were some reform. In August 1831, the slave revolt that most terrified white slaveholders was that led by Nat Turner. Most terrifying, because the slave consists of 75 black people, murder, kill 60 white people in 2 days. That is the cruelty exists in the white and in the black because of slavery. Inhuman treatment. Up to the year of 1860, there were 5 slave states that maintain slavery. That is Alabama, Arkansas, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. 15 slave states. Slave state mean legal. Slavery were legal at that period. Like ownership, like a thing that can be sold. They regarded not as a human being, but like a thing can be sold in the market. That is slavery. From the beginning in the early 17th century up to 1860, there are 15 slave states. What then happened? We continue to the second subject, Trail of Tears. The settlers, the farmers, the American have a lot of land in abundance, in plenty, but they need more land. They need more land to cultivate. What then? The Native American, people call Indians, who has long been there before the newcomers, before the settler, before the colonies happened in America, there were Native American, they call Indian. Westerners need their places because of they need more plenty, they need more area to cultivate. By the time of Andrew Jackson presidency in the year of 1825 up to 1829 had long been an advocate of what he called Indian removal. Andrew Jackson president, they campaign and advocate what he called Indian removal. Removal meant to remove. Can you think that one and more village move by force? As a president, he continued this crusade. He continues the program. So then he signed the Indian Removal Act. Andrew Jackson signed. So Removal Act, then removal action, then legalized, which gave the federal government the power to exchange native land in the Cotton Kingdom east of the Mississippi and move to the West Mississippi. President Jackson and his government ignored the letter of the law and forced Native Americans to vacate land they had lived generation to generation. Just by force, ignore any comment, just want to vacate the place, the land owned by the Indian people. At the beginning of the 1830s, can you imagine 125,000 Native American, that is Indian, live million acres islands in Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, and Florida. That is the land of their ancestors had occupied and cultivated for generations. They have to leave it. They left their own land because of the white American. Forced them to move by force, by military action. The federal government forced them to leave their homeland and walk thousands of miles. Do you think? What do you think? Walk thousands of miles, walk 1,000 kilometers to a special design Indian territory across the Mississippi River. This difficult and sometimes deadly journey is known as the Trail of Tears. Why they call it Trail of Tears? Because they are forced to live without any spot, without food, buy food, and very long journey. While before the removal act legalized, the native Indian, the Native American, they were rich people, they were happy people, they were not thinking that their land will be occupied by the white America. State government joined the effort to drive Native American from their land in the south. That is, their land in the south. South slave country, slave state need more land. Many states passed laws limiting the right of Native American and limiting their territory. They take the ownership are limited. Southern states wanted to take control of Native American land, and there was nothing that would stop them from continuing to attempt to do so. Nothing. Nobody would stop because they were strong. On the other side, the Indian not weak, but because of the strong force by the military and the government, so they have to follow. The Chato, Native American, became the first nation to be expelled from its land altogether. That is the Chato. They made the journey to Indian territory on foot. Some bound in chain, bound in chain and march double file. And without any food, any supplies or other help from the government. Starvation happened. Thousands of people died along the way. Thousands of people. What do you think? The act historically was very cruel. What happened then on the journey, walking 1,000 miles? Whooping cough, typhus, dysentery, cholera, and starvation were epidemic along the way. Can you imagine? I think every Indian cries at that period. Yeah, crying while they were forced to move. Army began enforcement of the removal act We discussed already. The Choctaw already. Now the Cherokee were rounded up in the summer of 1838 and loaded onto boat that traveled the Tennessee, Ohio, Mississippi, and Arkansas River into Indian territory in the west of Mississippi. Some good slogan happened at that period. Move west. Go west for the best. Many were held in prison camps awaiting their fate. About 4,000 Indians died from hunger, exposure, and disease. Exposure and disease. By hot of the sunlight, that is exposure. And this is heaven. The journey became a cultural memory as the trail where they cry. Memory, yes. And noted by their new generation. For the Cherokee and other removal tribe. Today it is widely remembered by the general public as the Trail of Tears. A journey of tears. At that time, in Indonesia, also experienced war, that is the war of Pangeran Diponegoro. Cruelty happened also everywhere at that, because that is historically noted. In America, in India, always also war happened. Disagreement happened, not only in our country. Okay, now we discuss civil war. But before discussing civil war, I would like to introduce or share knowledge about the American freedom. Before the civil war happened, South America and North America the slave state and the industrial in the north work together to get freedom from British Empire. That happened in the July 14, 1776. We didn't discuss the American freedom, but we discuss civil war. What happened? Civilized people abandoned people of plenty, experienced civil war. Well, they got their freedom already. What do you think? Civilized people between the North and the South America, they together made the country of United States of America. But although they were civilized and cultural people, but again, because of business, because of profit owning slavery became the main cause. The main cause of civil war, just because the slavery system, the South slave state want to maintain slavery, while the North want to abolish the slave. After getting freedom from the British Empire, American government, their system called federalism. But because of the South wanted to maintain the slavery, they didn't want the slavery abolished. Then the slave state made a new system in opposite of federalism. They call it confederalism. You get it? In the mid 19th century, while the United States was experiencing an era of tremendous growth, a fundamental economic difference existed between the country's northern and southern region. You get it? We discussed already. While in the north, manufacturing and industry was well established. There are a lot of invention, and agriculture was mostly limited to small-scale farm. That is in the north. While in the south, economy was based on a system of large-scale of farming that depend on the labor of black slave to grow certain crop, especially cotton, tobacco, sugar cane, etc. You get it? That is the difference of the way of the business in the south through farming, cultivating, while in the north, industry and manufacturing appear advocate of abolishing slavery. growing abolitionist sentiment in the North after the 1830s and northern opposition to slavery extension into the new western territories led many Southerners fear that the existence of slavery in America as backbone of their economy were in danger. That is the feeling, the existence of slavery were in danger. Civil War started because of uncompromising differences between the free and slave state over the power of the national government to prohibit slavery in the territories in the United States of America. Very simple. Very simple cause. Just uncompromising differences between free slave and maintaining the slave. Then 1,000 of American involved in civil war. Very, very simple cause. For us, a simple cause, but for the southern slave state, they feel slave and their economy were in danger in case the slavery were abolished. Lincoln won the election in the 1860s as the first Republican president on a platform pledging to keep slavery out of territories. Abraham Lincoln on their campaign also stating to abolish slavery. The promise. 7 slave states in the Deep South seceded and formed a new nation, the Confederate States of America. That is the main cause then the war happened. Slavery, agree and disagree of slavery, maintain and abolish of slavery, the South seceded and made a new nation with the system of Confederate States of America. Then Lincoln administration and northern people refused to recognize the legitimacy of decision. No need to recognize, no need to legitimate the Confederate States of America. Why? Why? They fear that it would discredit democracy and create a fatal precedent that would be eventually fragment the no longer United States. You get it? No longer United States because of Confederate and Federal. They are heroes who need united, while the South need separate. Then civil war happened. The South began the war. The Confederate Army on that day opened fire on the federal garrison and forced it to lower the American flag in surrender. That is. By the Fort Sumter, the Confederate Army put down the American flag. By the end of 1861, then nearly 1 million armed men confronted each other. 1 million, not small amount. 1 million, which armed confronted each other along a line stretching 1,200 miles from Virginia to Missouri. That is the line. You can see in Google or find in YouTube the Civil War today. The war is very simple, not like the Sky War now. The real fighting began in 1862. The South state put down the American flag, and the North, the federal sent million of army. Then the war began. By 1864, the original northern goal of a limited war to restore the Union, to save the Union, had given way to new strategy of total war, then total war. You know total war? To destroy the old South and its basic institution of slavery, and to give the restored Union a new burst of freedom. New burst of freedom, as President Lincoln put it in his address at Gettysburg, 2 dedicated a cemetery for Union soldiers killed the battle there. By the spring of 1865, all the principal Confederate armies surrendered. The armies of the South slave country surrendered to the North Union cavalry, captured the fleeing Confederate President Jefferson Davis. The President of the Confederate of the United States was Jefferson Davis, flee but captured by May 10, 1865. The resistance collapsed and the war ended. The long, painful process of rebuilding a United Nations free of slavery began. That is the end of the slavery by constitution. Not abolished at all, but another problem happened. There is segregation, black segregation, human right movement happened later because the equal idea, the ideal of equality was not run smoothly. I think until 1950. Later we discuss. Thank you. Hopefully you get anything important for you discussing slavery, discussing Trail of Tears, discussing Civil War. You still remember the first settler are all Puritanism. Religion, civilized, but because of need more abundant, need more, not enough plenty, but more plenty, they experience slavery, they conduct slavery, Native Indian, Native American Removal Act, and Civil War. Okay, so it happened because of economical consciousness. That is economic, because of economy. Thank you very much. Meet again next week. Bye bye. See you.